The Sisters is the first short story of the 15 short stories collection titled Dubliners by the Irish writer James Joyce, published in 1914. It is a work of realist fiction written in the modernist tradition, set in 1895 in Dublin, Ireland, and is from the limited first-person perspective of a young nameless boy. Click the link in the description box to check out all the other Dubliner stories. Dublin was the second largest city in the British Isles at the start of the 19th century. Still, by the later part of the century, Belfast had surpassed it as Ireland's leading city and Dublin's economy was wilting. Power was concentrated in the hands of a Protestant English minority. During Joyce's formative years in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Irish history was marked by the fight for independence after centuries of British rule. The rise of Irish nationalism was the most significant historical movement when Dubliners was written and published. In The Sisters, Father Flynn's house on Great Britain Street reflects this mounting desire for Irish independence. The Sisters scrutinizes the Catholic Church's role in Irish society and shrewdly suggests that the Church's influence might need to diminish as Ireland sought to establish itself as an independent nation. The young impressionable narrator talks about his friend, an elderly man who has suffered his third stroke. Each day, the narrator passes by his friend's window, anticipating the sight of 2 candles in the darkness, a signal that his friend has died, as 2 candles are placed at the head of a corpse. His friend has been paralyzed for a while, which always sounded strangely to the narrator. One evening, as the narrator, who lives with his aunt and uncle, comes downstairs for dinner, a family friend or neighbor named Old Cotter visits. The narrator dislikes Old Cotter's boring, endless stories and finds him tiresome old fool. Old Cotter thought there was something queer, something uncanny about him, and discusses a theory about one of those peculiar cases, soon revealed to be the death of Father Flynn, the narrator's retired old friend. The narrator's uncle remarks on the close bond between the narrator and Father Flynn. Old Cotter criticizes this friendship, believing let a young lad run about and play with young lads of his own age. The narrator, though silent, is inwardly angry with Old Cotter for alluding to me as a child. That night, he struggles to sleep, upset by Cotter's comments and to extract meaning from his unfinished sentences regarding the priest. The old priest's paralyzed face haunts him in a dream as if the priest is trying to confess something. The following day, the narrator visits the building where Father Flynn spent his final days and reads the death announcement on the door. He recalls his visits to the priest's dark room, bringing him a packet of high toast snuff as a gift, and learning about history and the Catholic Church. He lacks the courage to enter and see the body. I found it strange that neither I nor the day seemed in a mourning mood, and I felt even annoyed at discovering in myself a sensation of freedom as if I had been freed from something by his death. That evening, he and his aunt visit the house of mourning, greeted by Nanny, one of Father Flynn's sisters. The body looked solemn and copious, vested as for the altar, his large hands loosely retaining a chalice. Eliza, the other sister, sits in Father Flynn's chair. As Nanny serves sherry and cream crackers, they discuss the death. Eliza shares that Father Flynn passed away peacefully and received his last rites and extreme unction. She recounts the hard work she and Nanny undertook to care for him, with help from Father O'Rourke. Despite their poverty and the difficulties, she will miss him. Frequently, she would find him reclining in his chair, his prayer book and his mouth open. She remarked that he had led a crossed life and the duties of the priesthood was too much for him. Though his behavior had become queer after the chalice he broke, that affected his mind. She recalls finding him, one night, in a confessional booth, wide awake and laughing softly to himself. It marked that there was something gone wrong with him. Let's analyze The Sisters. The Sisters features its youngest protagonist facing the reality of death for the first time. The physical death of Father Flynn releases him from what seems to have been a disappointed and crossed existence, culminating in a haunting image of him sitting in the dark in his confession box, wide awake and laughing softly to himself. This death also frees the boy from the decay and corruption he might have faced had he continued his association with the priest and eventually his nudge into the church. The narrator notes, I found it strange that neither I nor the day seemed in a mourning mood, and I felt even annoyed at discovering in myself a sensation of freedom as if I had been freed from something by his death. Father Flynn appears to have experienced a spiritual death long before his physical demise. After Father Flynn's death, the narrator is haunted by vivid images of his physical presence, especially his big discolored teeth, and let his tongue lie upon his lower lip, a habit which had made me feel uneasy. And in the dark of my room I imagined that I saw again the heavy gray face of the paralytic. These grotesque images emphasize the eerie nature of death. The sisters' accounts of Father Flynn's odd behavior contribute to his haunting presence. Mind you, I noticed there was something queer coming over him latterly. Whenever I'd bring in his soup to him there I'd find him with his breviary fallen to the floor, lying back in the chair and his mouth open. During the sit-down with the sisters, normal activities like eating, drinking, and talking are overshadowed by Father Flynn's death. After viewing the corpse, she pressed me to take some cream crackers also, but I declined because I thought I would make too much noise eating them. Also, the narrator's aunt struggles to discuss death, trailing off when asking about Father Flynn's final moments. Did he peacefully, she asked, and everything. In the opening paragraph, Joyce introduces the theme of paralysis as the boy looks up at the dying priest's window and thinks of the word paralysis. It had always sounded strangely in my ears, like the word gnomon in the Euclid and the word simony in the Catechism. But now it sounded to me like the name of some maleficent and sinful being. This word suggests not only the priest's physical ailment from a stroke but also his spiritual and social shortcomings. The heavy gray face of the paralytic in the boy's dream, described as had died of paralysis, and I felt that I too was smiling feebly as if to absolve the simoniac of his sin, belongs to Father Flynn, whose big discolored teeth symbolize decay and deterioration. Father Flynn represents the stagnant Catholic Church and its power to paralyze others. The boy's time with the priest keeps him from enjoying life with young lads of his own age. Father Flynn lives on Meath Street and dies on the anniversary of England's victory over Ireland on July 1, 1690 in the Battle of the Boyne. The narrator, paralyzed by waiting for Father Flynn's death, does not approach the house or go home but lingers outside, hoping to see the candles that will signify his release. When he visits with his aunt, he finds that Father Flynn's sisters are also paralyzed by grief and the routine of caring for their brother. Nanny is the main caregiver, while Eliza is stuck in memories of her brother's decline, starting with the dropped chalice that embarrassed Father Flynn and marked the beginning of his downfall. She notes that the chalice was empty, indicating no sacred desecration. This incident foreshadows his physical and mental decline. The narrator and his aunt's inability to eat or talk during their visit echoes the paralysis introduced at the story's start. This connection between paralysis, death, and religion is a recurring theme throughout Dubliners. The Sisters revolves around a young boy's relationship with a dying priest, highlighting the significance of Catholicism in Old Ireland. Father Flynn, unable to firmly hold the chalice, ultimately loses his sanity in a confessional box. The imagery of Holy Communion resurfaces when the narrator is offered crackers and sherry at the priest's wake. Sherry, derived from wine, and cream crackers, resembling communion wafers, evokes the ritual of Holy Communion. The narrator accepts the sherry but declines the crackers, worried that eating them would be too noisy, paralleling Father Flynn's fear of desecrating the communion by dropping the chalice. This scene contrasts the sacred ritual of Holy Communion with a secular version, marked by sherry and crackers. Father Flynn's wake is a subdued and poorly attended event, reflecting the inadequacy of the ritual in honoring his life. Through this story, the boy gains insight into Father Flynn's reality. Notably, during a moment of revelation from Eliza, the boy symbolically partakes in his rite of passage by sipping sherry from an altar-like table. This narrative introduces religion as a persistent, ineffectual, and disturbing facet of Dublin life. The priest's mental deterioration reveals his vulnerability, though the exact nature of his condition is never disclosed. His madness and hinted past sins suggest a life beyond his church duties. While he was once a spiritual guide and church caretaker, these roles are overshadowed by his deterioration, making piety seem debatable and undermining the comfort faith provides. The boy's friendship with Father Flynn is questioned, particularly by Old Cotter, who believes such a relationship could inappropriately influence the young narrator, who should be playing with his peers. The boy feels profound, expected grief for the priest but is frustrated by his inability to mourn fully, showing his awareness of societal expectations. His dreams, featuring the priest as if confessing, suggest a subconscious suspicion of Father Flynn's past. Joyce carefully provides just enough detail to cast doubt on Father Flynn's character without revealing the full story. This technique is introduced in the opening paragraph, where the narrator associates the word paralysis with Father Flynn's window, likening it to the word gnomon, and the word simony in the Catechism, maleficent and sinful being. The word gnomon relates to sundials and by extension to the times past, while simony is the selling of pardons or church offices. Old Cotter leaves vague hints regarding Father Flynn's character and his presumed past sins while not revealing what he knows. No, I wouldn't say he was exactly. But there was something queer. There was something uncanny about him. I'll tell you my opinion. I have my own theory about it, he said. I think it was one of those peculiar cases. But it's hard to say. Eliza also leaves room for interpretation regarding Father Flynn's odd behavior. Wide awake and laughing like to himself. So then, of course, when they saw that made them think that there was something gone wrong with him. The story also ends on an ellipsis, symbolizing what is left unsaid, whether due to ignorance or fear. Old Cotter's vague references to Father Flynn's strange behavior could relate to the incidents Eliza describes or the priest's post-stroke appearance, implying a desire to shield the boy from death. However, Cotter's speech also hints at a more disturbing danger. The priest's final plunge into madness, found in a confessional, suggests his mental illness might stem from a past transgression. Now we'll look at the important symbolism of the sisters. In The Sisters, the narrator looks through a window each night, waiting for signs of Father Flynn's death. The narrator stands gazing outside the window but does not actively go inside the house. By the end of the tale, he is physically present in the room but quietly removes himself from the conversation between Eliza and his aunt. It's like he is observing the scene from a distance. This opening image underpins an idea of silent and detached observation, a technique that Joyce uses throughout the later stories. It suggests that even first-hand experiences can be salacious and inquisitive, allowing individuals to observe their own lives from an outside perspective. The chalice in The Sisters symbolizes the connection between the Catholic faith and the community. Father Flynn's accidental breaking of the chalice, likely due to his declining motor skills, represents his weakening hold on both his faith and his physical well-being. Eliza interprets this as divine retribution, believing his mental deterioration began after the incident. The chalice reappears during the priest's wake, loosely held by him in the coffin, symbolizing his failure to maintain his relationship with the church and community. Hope you like, share and subscribe for more videos on the analysis of Dubliners short stories.